Hello, everyone. Hope you're having a fantastic day. My name is Kmart, and I want to talk about some basketball. And today, we are talking about how every Western Conference team can win the NBA Finals. So, last year, I did these sorts of videos, one for each conference, kind of just going over the best case scenario for every team. So, I figured, why not do it again this year with the start of the season? Still maybe a couple of months away. So, we're going to talk about every team in the Western Conference here. Before I get started, I do just want to say, by default, we are assuming in all of these scenarios that the team has all of its star players stay healthy, just so that I don't have to repeat that point for every single team as we go. So, with that being said, we're going to go in alphabetical order, which means team number one is the Dallas Mavericks. For the Mavs to win the finals, they just keep doing what they do or did last season, but with the addition of Klay Thompson, Klay has to play well enough to push the Mavs over the top and make up for the team's losses at the wing position during this last off season. Hardaway Jr., Green, and Derrick Jones Jr. were all guys who sort of played at that wing spot, drifting between the 2, the 3, and in Jones Jr.'s case, maybe down to the 4 every once in a while. They're all gone now. So Thompson has to play well enough to make up for the losses of all those players. Moving on to team number 2, the Denver Nuggets. Pretty simple for them. Jamal Murray bounces back from whatever that slump was at the Olympics. Nikola Jokic has another MVP caliber season, and the bench collectively makes up for the loss of KCP. The Nuggets have been a team fueled by their starters pretty much throughout the entirety of their run here as an elite team. That has to happen again. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope leaving is a bit of a bummer, but the other 4 starters should still play well enough to make up for that, so the bench just has to pick up the slack as a unit. Team number 3, the Golden State Warriors. The Warriors need another all-time performance from Steph Curry, as we've been seeing from him recently. They need Buddy Hield to definitively be that second star for them, basically form Splash Brothers 2.0 between himself and Steph, and they need either Kuminga or Podziemski to prove that they're ready to be stars right now. The Warriors are looking at guys like Kuminga and Podziemski as, maybe faces of the future, but for the Warriors to have a shot at the title, the future needs to be right now. One or both of those guys needs to be ready to go, really, right in this season. But that moves us along from Golden State to the Houston Rockets. For the Rockets to win the finals, they need either Alperen Şengün or Jalen Green, or again, both, to definitively become sort of all-star caliber players, maybe make a run at something like the Most Improved Player award. And they need, they need for their defense to hold up, and they need their offense to find a way to not be near the bottom of the league in efficiency. Right, their defense was great. They were 5th in field goal percentage, 1st in 3-point percentage against, but in terms of the offense, not so great. 5th in field goal attempts per game, but only 27th in the league in field goal percentage. So not very efficient. They need to step that up, and they need, as I mentioned, someone like Şengün or Green to definitively be the guy for this team. Think SGA with the Thunder kind of scenario. But that moves us along to the first of our 2 LA-based teams, the Los Angeles Clippers. For the Clippers to win the finals, they need to discover that somehow Paul George was secretly holding them back this whole time, and his departure allows the duo of Kawhi Leonard and James Harden to launch their revenge tour on the rest of the NBA, and to basically form a dominant, record-breaking duo that just drags the rest of the Clippers to a championship. Which we know what Harden and Kawhi Leonard are capable of when they are playing at their absolute best in their prime. They need both of those things to happen at the same time. Meanwhile, moving along to the other LA team, the Los Angeles Lakers, they need multiple things to happen here. 1, LeBron and Anthony Davis both have to have monster, all-star, crazy good seasons. They need someone to step up as a true third star for the team, and they need their defense to shape up and hopefully get back to elite status, but at least not be sort of bottom third in terms of their shooting defense. And if all of those points sound familiar, it's because it was the exact same 3 points, I believe, that I made in last year's video. And the points all still stand because the Lakers really did not change anything. They come into this season with a remarkably similar lineup to what they had last year, so their needs are the same. So we'll move along to something that is not simply a repeat of last year, and that is the Memphis Grizzlies. It's relatively straightforward for Memphis, actually. They just need no one to forget how to play basketball after last season's painful, injury-riddled campaign. And the team needs to find someone to reliably play the front court alongside Jaren Jackson Jr. We know what we're going to get from this team. John Morant, Desmond Bane, Marcus Smart even throw into the mix. The guard core is fine for the Grizzlies if they are healthy. This is a team that had back-to-back second-place finishes in the West in the regular season when everybody was healthy. We would expect similar stuff there. But that front court is the question. Jaren Jackson Jr. has been good enough to fantastic at times, but we need to see someone to play alongside him. That's almost certainly going to be the rookie that they drafted, Zach Edey, but you can never really be too careful in terms of having multiple big men, so a third reliable big would not hurt the Grizzlies at all. But we go from Memphis to Minnesota for our next team, the Timberwolves. For the Timberwolves to win the finals, they need Anthony Edwards to put in an MVP caliber season. They need to continue to shoot well from outside, and they need to stay one of the elite defenses in the league. So Anthony Edwards is a beast. We all know that. His stats last year were very impressive and a large part of the Timberwolves' success. Need him to do that again. Minnesota shot the third best three-point percentage in the league. So again, maintaining that will be a large part in the Timberwolves' success. But the defense really is the most important aspect here. First in defensive rating, first in points allowed, first in field goals allowed, and first in field goal percentage against. So if you maintain your position as one of the top 2 or 3 defenses in the league, the path to the finals is a hell of a lot smoother. So moving things along here from Minnesota to New Orleans. We take a look at the Pelicans here. For the Pelicans to win the title, Zion needs to finally sort of achieve full power and come into his own as the absolute uncontested star of this Pelican squad. And they need the quad stack of him, DeJounte Murray, Brandon Ingram, and CJ McCollum to make the Pelicans so good and so powerful that they don't really end up missing all of the depth that they lost this offseason. Basically, we're looking at the same blueprint that the Nuggets play by, right? Their bench is not really one of the better ones in the league, but it doesn't matter because their starters play so well. The Pelicans need that same thing to happen here. They need the DeJounte Murray trade to pay off, and they need Zion to continue the sort of Nuggets analogy. They need Zion to be their Jokic, effectively, to be the guy who sort of drives this engine in terms of scoring, rebounding, and even playmaking, right? If they can do that, then they won't miss the guys that they lost in this offseason, because they did lose quite a few guys. Dyson Daniels, Najee Marshall, Larry Nance Jr., and Jonas Valanciunas all appeared in over 60 games for the Pelicans last season. They all averaged at least 19 minutes, in those games, and they're all gone now. So Pelicans bench is absolutely thinner than it was before, but if Zion and the other starters play well enough, that won't really matter. But that moves us to our next squad on the list, the Oklahoma City Thunder. It starts with SGA. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander needs to have another sort of case for MVP with his play this season. The Thunder need one of either Jalen Williams or Chet Holmgren, probably the latter, to join SGA in sort of true all-star status. And the Thunder need for their offseason additions to maybe add a bit more of that toughness and tenacity and defensive strength to the team, right? The two guys in particular I'm looking at in terms of offseason additions, Alex Caruso and Isaiah Hartenstein. They're certainly no strangers to physical, defensively oriented play. That's something they need to bring to the Thunder. Also, in the case of Hartenstein, a rebounding specialist who should help a team that was 27th in the league last year in total rebounds. So, the guys that they've got need to continue to play well. The guys they brought in need to slot into the scheme for the Thunder, and they should have a solid shot at it. But that moves us from Oklahoma City to the Phoenix Suns. For the Suns to have a shot, they still need to lean on that big three of Durant, Booker, and Beal. They need the bench to provide a little bit more assistance and not be last in the league. And they also need to emphasize their outside shooting a little bit more here, right? We know what we're getting from the big three. Booker, Durant, Beal, elite offensive talents. We know that. We can expect good things from them. The bench for the Suns was last in the league in bench points. They cannot afford to be that bad again. They don't have to be great. They just need to basically not be last. And in terms of the three-point shooting, they really should lean on it a little more heavily. The Suns were 5th in the league in three-point percentage. They had 3 players shooting over 41% from 3 while taking at least 4 attempts per game, but they were still just 25th in the league in three-point attempts and 20th in three-pointers made as a team. So the efficiency's there, the volume could stand to improve a bit as well. And maybe the increase in volume decreases that efficiency slightly, but I think it's a risk the Suns have to take. Moving things along here to the Portland Trailblazers, here's where things get a little less optimistic. For the Trailblazers to make it to the NBA Finals, every other team in the league has to quit playing basketball this year. That's all I got. The Trailblazers' time is coming, that's for sure. The future is bright for them. They've got a lot of sort of things to look forward to, but that time is not now. The day is not today. They've got guys that they feel good about, right? The guard trio, Sharp, Simons, Henderson. They're still looking for Ayton to sort of have that redemption arc go for them, and they just pulled off, this offseason, they pulled off a very solid trade for a good young guy in Deni Avdija, which is a move that I absolutely loved for Portland. But none of that means anything this year. It's still not going to happen. This is still a developing team. The future may be bright for Portland, but it's not happening in this particular season. So, sorry, Portland, but yeah, I just don't really see it. But we move things along to the Sacramento Kings. For the Kings, it all comes down to one guy. DeMar DeRozan has to prove that he was the missing piece for this team the whole time, and that the trade for him was the right decision to make. DeRozan's a proven scorer. He's an asset in the clutch, which was a massive weak point for this Kings team. They had the 3rd most clutch minutes played. Their record in those games was something like 20-19. So he can definitely help on that front. And the hope for the Kings is just that everything comes together. DeRozan's addition to the roster, the return of Huerter and Monk from injury, the ongoing development of a guy like Keegan Murray, and the usual excellence from Domantas Sabonis and De'Aaron Fox need to all come together simultaneously to push the Kings into being an elite team. So DeRozan has to, again, prove that he's sort of that missing piece. But we move things along to the penultimate team on this list, the San Antonio Spurs, and this is going to be another slightly less realistic one. For the Spurs to win the finals, they need for the veterans that they brought in this offseason to suddenly sort of impart their wisdom and their experience onto the Spurs' young core here so that they can suddenly make massive improvements to their game and basically shave off several years from their development. Alongside that, they need Victor Wembanyama to basically put together the greatest second season in the history of the NBA. That's all that they need, quote unquote, right? The young core here for the Spurs, Wemby, Vassell, Johnson, Sohan, they were fun last year. There's really no denying that. They were a fun young team to watch, but like most young teams, they were not very good. They were incredibly inexperienced, and they were massively inefficient. That's the way that it goes with most young teams. We were talking about that same thing with the Rockets, even into last season. So for them to suddenly turn it around and compete for a championship, Wembanyama has to suddenly become, the guy. We already sort of expect him to be the heart of this team, but he has to be elite. He has to put together, as I said, the greatest second season we've ever seen. And the guys that they brought in who have that experience, guys like Chris Paul, guys like Harrison Barnes, have to suddenly turn young, reckless, inexperienced players into disciplined, experienced stars. Technically speaking, it could happen, but it seems incredibly unlikely. But that's what it would take for the Spurs. But that moves us along here to the final team on our list, and that is the Utah Jazz. For the Jazz to win the finals, Lauri Markkanen has to be so good that he single-handedly keeps the Jazz competitive into around the halfway point of the season, December, January, thereabouts, and convinces the front office to swing a massive trade for some sort of superstar to help lead the team the rest of the way to a title. I love Markkanen. He's great. You know, the Warriors seem to think so too. They tried hard to trade for him this offseason, but he cannot do it by himself. And this Jazz team, as currently constructed, would struggle to reach the postseason flat out, let alone compete for a title. But if Markkanen can keep them afloat long enough, the Jazz do have the assets to potentially swing for some sort of co-star for Markkanen. I have no idea who that guy would be, no idea who would even be available, but that would have to be the scenario. They would have to make a massive, sudden upgrade midway through the season to keep them going, effectively. But that's all I got. As I mentioned, some of these scenarios are far more likely than others. Some of them I know are absolute sort of stretches of the imagination, but frankly, that's part of the fun. But let me know what you think. Which of these do you believe are, realistic? Which of them do you think are doable for the teams involved? On the other side of things, which of these do you think are just absolute fantasy that would never happen and that I'm completely off base about? As I said, that's part of the point, but still. Feel free to let me know what you think. But other than that, thank you all so much for watching, and I will talk to you later.